The night was unusually still for a stormy evening in the village of Kofi, nestled in the heart of an ancient forest. The wind had calmed, the rain had stopped, and an eerie silence hung in the air, broken only by the occasional rumble of thunder. Most villagers had retreated to their homes, thankful for the passing storm, but they were unaware that something far stranger was about to happen. At the center of the village, the marketplace lay deserted. The wind whispered through the empty stalls, pushing discarded leaves along the cobblestones. It was there, under the dim light of a single lantern, that something extraordinary occurred. A blinding flash of light tore through the sky. It was not a bolt of lightning, but something far more intense, an unnatural brilliance that momentarily blinded the entire village. Then, as quickly as it came, the light vanished, leaving a hush behind it. The villagers gathered at their windows, staring into the dark sky, wondering what they had just witnessed. But before they could even exchange thoughts, a deafening crash shook the ground beneath them. Kofi had no memory of how he had arrived. One moment, he was suspended in the air, surrounded by an intense, swirling light. The next, he found himself plummeting toward the earth, his body weightless but out of control. He collided with the ground with such force that the sound reverberated through the marketplace, causing windows to shatter and dust to rise in thick clouds. The young boy groaned, his body battered but somehow alive. His head swam, disoriented and confused. His hands pressed against the cobblestones as he pushed himself up. He could feel the heat of something burning in his chest, a strange, pulsing warmth that felt neither natural nor human. His clothes were torn, his hair matted with dirt, and his eyes were wide with shock. Where am I? He thought, trying to make sense of his surroundings. The village was eerily quiet as the villagers began to slowly emerge from their homes. They approached cautiously, staring at the boy who had fallen from the sky. His skin was dark, but there was something otherworldly about his presence, an aura that suggested he was no mere mortal. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim moonlight, not with the brightness of fire, but with the quiet intensity of something ancient. He had no memory of who he was or how he had arrived. A small crowd gathered around him, whispering in hushed tones. The elder stepped forward, wary but curious. Among them was Themba, the village elder, whose weathered face had seen more years than most could fathom. He was the first to speak, his voice low but commanding. "Who are you, child?" Themba asked, his eyes scanning the boy, trying to see beyond his disheveled appearance. The boy stared back, unsure of how to respond. His mind felt blank. The only thing he could remember was the sensation of falling, not from a place, but from something that had been holding him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He tried again, but all he could manage was a hoarse whisper, I don't know." The villagers exchanged nervous glances. The young boy seemed to have no recollection of his origins, and yet, there was something about him that felt familiar. There was an unsettling presence around him, as if he didn't belong to this world. As the crowd continued to murmur, Themba motioned for the villagers to step back. He knelt down beside the boy, his eyes softening with a mix of pity and intrigue. "You are not from this world, are you, child?" the elder asked quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. The boy looked into Themba's eyes, and for a brief moment, something stirred deep inside him. A distant memory. A flicker of recognition. He nodded slowly, though he didn't know why. "Yes," he whispered, "I'm different." The villagers, fearful of the unknown, were reluctant to approach the boy any closer. But Themba, sensing that the boy was not an immediate threat, ordered that he be taken in for the night. They led him to a modest home at the edge of the village, where Amina, the village healer, was waiting. Amina was a woman in her 40s, her hands rough from years of working with herbs and medicines, but her heart kind and understanding. She took one look at the boy and immediately went to work, cleaning his wounds and soothing his confusion with gentle words. The boy didn't speak much over the next few hours, lost in thought as Amina tended to his injuries. But she couldn't ignore the strange energy that surrounded him, something that didn't feel entirely human. His pulse, though strong, throbbed unnaturally in her hands, almost as if he were drawing energy from the very room around him. "Are you from the stars?" Amina asked softly, breaking the silence. The boy flinched at the question, his eyes flickering. He didn't know the answer, but he felt as though the question held some deeper truth. Instead of answering, he closed his eyes, trying to push away the feeling of foreignness inside him. Suddenly, a sharp, shrill cry broke the quiet of the night. The sound seemed to come from deep within the forest, a call so primal it rattled the very air. Amina's eyes widened in fear. "That sound, it's the call of the Mamba," she murmured, clutching her chest. "It's said to be the sign of an awakening." The boy, still dazed, sat up suddenly, his body reacting to the call. His skin tingled with an electric pulse as he turned toward the forest. His heart beat faster, synchronized with the rhythm of the distant cries. There was something pulling him, something calling him from the heart of the woods. That night, under the faint glow of a dying moon, the boy had a dream. He was standing alone in the heart of a vast forest, surrounded by trees that whispered in ancient tongues. A great dragon, its scales dark as midnight, stood before him. Its eyes were filled with centuries of wisdom, its voice a rumbling thunder that shook the very earth. "You are the one," the dragon's voice echoed in his mind. "The blood of my kin runs through your veins, and the fate of this world lies in your hands." The boy awoke with a start, drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. He could still feel the dragon's presence in his bones, its words resonating deep inside him. He didn't understand it, but he knew something ancient had awoken within him. And it was calling him home. The following morning, Kofi awoke with a strange, lingering sense of familiarity. The air around him felt different, as though it was charged with an energy he couldn't quite understand. His body ached from the crash, but it was more than physical pain. There was something within him, deep inside his chest, that thrummed with an ancient power. He felt like a stranger in his own skin, as though his true self had been buried beneath layers of confusion and fear. The village had returned to its normal rhythm, the morning light casting golden rays over the stone buildings. But for Kofi, everything felt foreign. The villagers moved past him, their curious glances now replaced with more comfort, but he could still see the uncertainty in their eyes. Amina, the healer who had helped him the night before, was waiting for him in the small, sunlit courtyard of the house where she had taken him in. She was sitting beside a bubbling pot, stirring a mixture of herbs with careful hands. Her kind eyes met his, and she smiled, though it was a smile tinged with caution. Kofi walked over, feeling the weight of his strange new world on his shoulders. "Amina," he said, his voice rough, as if it had been unused for too long. "I feel strange." Amina looked at him with both concern and wisdom. "You've been through much in the last day, child. Your body will heal, but there is more at work here than simple wounds. I can feel it, too." "What do you mean?" Kofi asked, sitting beside her. "There is a force inside you, something that draws power from the earth itself. It pulses through you like the beating of a heart. You were not simply born into this world. You were called," Amina said, her voice barely above a whisper. Kofi looked at her, confused. "Called? By whom? And why?" Amina hesitated, searching for the right words. "The dragon." She nodded towards the distant trees at the edge of the forest. "The Mamba calls, and with it, the awakening of something much older than even the forest itself." Kofi's breath caught in his throat. His mind flashed back to the dream, the massive dragon, its eyes glowing with ancient power, speaking in a voice that reverberated deep within his bones. "The dragon, you mean the one I saw in my dream?" Amina's eyes widened slightly. "Yes. Zaroth, the great guardian of the forest. The protector of this land." The name struck Kofi like a thunderclap. Zaroth. The dragon from his dream. The one whose presence lingered in his every thought, whose voice echoed through the core of his being. He remembered the warmth, the fire in Zaroth's gaze, and the sensation that they were connected, bound by something he couldn't yet comprehend. "How do you know of him?" Kofi asked, his voice trembling. "Legends," Amina replied. "Tales passed down through the ages. Some say that Zaroth was the last of the ancient dragons, bound to the bloodline of the first guardians who protected this world from chaos. Your ancestors, Kofi, were the ones who kept the balance, maintaining the peace between the creatures of the forest and the human world." Kofi felt a chill run down his spine. "And now I'm, what? A guardian?" Amina's eyes softened. "In a sense. The bond between you and Zaroth is not just a mere connection, it is a pact forged by your bloodline, a pact that ties you to the very forces of nature itself. You were born to protect the world from a power that could destroy it." Kofi felt a surge of something inside him, an energy he had never known before. He could feel the forest calling to him, its presence as real as the sun on his skin. The air seemed to shift as if the trees themselves were speaking to him, urging him forward. I don't understand," Kofi muttered, trying to wrap his mind around the gravity of Amina's words. "What is this power I'm meant to stop?" Amina sighed deeply, her gaze turning towards the forest edge. "The Mamba's call is not just the awakening of the forest. It is the call of the ancient curse. A curse that was placed on Zaroth, and the land itself, to keep a darkness sealed away. A force that has been dormant for centuries, waiting to break free." Kofi stood up suddenly, his heart racing. "A darkness? What darkness?" "The Ishara," Amina whispered, her voice trembling with fear. "An ancient dragon, once a protector like Zaroth, who was corrupted by dark magic. Ishara sought to control the land and the creatures of the forest, using dark power to break the boundaries between worlds. The guardians, your ancestors, fought her and sealed her away, but that power has been growing again. The curse, the bond, all of it, it is tied to you, Kofi. And now, the world is on the brink of awakening something far worse than you could imagine." Kofi's thoughts were reeling. His entire existence had been turned upside down in the span of a single day. The dragon, Zaroth, the curse, Ishara, none of it made sense, but somehow, he could feel it in his bones. The truth of what Amina was saying was undeniable. Something ancient and powerful was stirring, and Kofi had become a part of it, a key in a long-forgotten war between light and dark. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet rumbled, and a deafening roar echoed through the trees. It was a sound that sent chills down his spine, a call so deep it seemed to shake the very earth. Amina's eyes widened in fear. The Mamba calls again. The dragon stirs. Kofi's heart pounded in his chest. The dream. The vision. It was all real. Without thinking, Kofi sprinted towards the edge of the village, his feet barely touching the ground as he ran toward the forest. He had to see Zaroth. He had to understand his place in all of this. The connection, the bond, he could feel it calling to him, urging him to act. As he entered the forest, the trees seemed to part, the wind whispering his name. He could sense Zaroth's presence ahead, a powerful force drawing him in. The ancient dragon was awakening, and Kofi's destiny was about to unfold. The dense forest closed around Kofi as he ran deeper into the shadows. The air grew cooler, and the sound of the wind rustling through the trees was drowned by the steady thrum of his heartbeat. Every step felt like it carried him closer to something ancient, something powerful, Zaroth. His connection to the dragon was undeniable now. Kofi could feel it in the way the forest responded to him, the way the earth seemed to hum with life beneath his feet. The trees parted as though they recognized him, guiding him deeper into the heart of the forest. As he neared the clearing, the air thickened with a strange, magnetic energy. The hair on the back of his neck stood up as he stepped into a vast open space, an ancient grove, untouched by time. At the center of the clearing stood a massive stone altar, half covered in vines and moss, with intricate carvings that seemed to glow faintly in the twilight. It was here, in this sacred place, that Kofi had seen the dragon in his dream, the massive creature with dark, shimmering scales and eyes glowing with an ancient, mystical light. And now, standing before him, Zaroth was real. The dragon's form loomed like a shadow, its great wings tucked against its sides, its head raised high as if to survey the world around it. Zaroth's eyes locked with Kofi's, glowing like embers, filled with wisdom, sorrow, and an unspoken understanding. Kofi stopped in his tracks, his heart racing as he gazed up at the dragon. Zaroth's form was immense, far larger than any creature Kofi had ever seen. The dragon's scales were deep, iridescent black, glistening under the moonlight like polished obsidian. His enormous horns curved back from his head, and his long, muscular body coiled like a serpent, poised and ready. "You have come," Zaroth's voice rumbled, not with sound, but with a deep vibration that Kofi felt in his chest. It was a voice older than the earth itself, rich with power and ancient knowledge. "At last, you have come." Kofi's breath caught in his throat. His voice felt trapped, but somehow, he managed to speak. "Who are you?" Kofi asked, his voice trembling with both awe and fear. He had known in his heart that the dragon would be real, but seeing him in person, the sheer presence of Zaroth, was overwhelming. "I am Zaroth," the dragon replied, his voice like a thunderstorm rolling in the distance. "Guardian of the forest. Keeper of the balance. And you, Kofi, are my bond. The last of your bloodline. The one who is tied to me by fate, by duty, and by the ancient pact." The dragon's form loomed like a shadow, its great wings tucked against its sides, its head raised high as if to survey the world around it. Zaroth's eyes locked with Kofi's, glowing like embers, filled with wisdom, sorrow, and an unspoken understanding. Kofi stopped in his tracks, his heart racing as he gazed up at the dragon. Zaroth's form was immense, far larger than any creature Kofi had ever seen. The dragon's scales were deep, iridescent black, glistening under the moonlight like polished obsidian. Kofi's mind reeled. "The last of my bloodline." He repeated the words like a mantra. "But I don't understand. I have no memory of this. How am I supposed to protect the world? I'm just a boy." Zaroth's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, his massive feet causing the ground to tremble slightly with each movement. "You are far more than a boy, Kofi. You are the heir to the ancient guardians, the ones who once kept the balance between all creatures, between humanity and the forces that seek to destroy it. Your blood carries the power of those who came before you, and the curse that binds us together is the key to maintaining the fragile peace between our world and the darkness that lurks beyond." Kofi shook his head, trying to make sense of what Zaroth was telling him. He had never been told of such things. His life had been simple, quiet. He had always wondered about the strange pull he felt when he entered the forest, the way the air seemed to change around him, but never did he imagine he would be tied to something as extraordinary as this. "You speak of a curse, but," Kofi paused, trying to find his words. "What curse? What darkness? Why me? Why now?" The dragon's eyes glowed with an intensity that sent a shiver down Kofi's spine. "The curse is not just a punishment. It is a bond, one forged by your ancestors, those who swore an oath to protect the world from the forces that seek to tear it apart. A long time ago, an ancient dragon, once our ally, was corrupted by dark magic. She sought to control the power of the world's creatures and break the boundaries that kept chaos at bay. Her name was Ishara, and her lust for power was so great that it threatened the very fabric of reality itself." Kofi's mind raced. "Ishara. What happened to her?" "Your ancestors fought her," Zaroth explained, his voice growing heavy with the weight of old memories. "They sealed her away in a prison beyond the edges of the world, using the strength of their bond with me and the curse that binds us. But in doing so, they locked her power and mine into one. Your bloodline, your family, has kept the seal intact. And now, you are the last of that bloodline. The seal is weakening, Kofi, and with it, Ishara's power is rising once more. Kofi's stomach churned. What does this mean? Why does it all come back to me? I'm not a warrior. I don't even know how to fight. Zaroth's eyes softened with something like compassion. You are not meant to fight, Kofi, but to embrace your destiny. The bond between you and I is not one of violence. It is one of protection, of balance. I have watched over this land for centuries, and I have felt the corruption of Ishara's magic growing. You have been called, Kofi, not to destroy, but to seal. The final seal that will lock away the darkness forever. Kofi felt the weight of Zaroth's words, and the reality of his situation began to sink in. He wasn't just some lost child who had fallen from the sky, he was part of something ancient, something that tied him to the earth itself. He was the last hope for maintaining the delicate balance between light and dark. And if I fail? Kofi whispered, his voice barely audible. Zaroth's massive head lowered, and he looked at Kofi with solemn eyes. If you fail, Ishara will rise again, and all will be consumed in darkness. The forests will wither, the creatures will fall, and humanity will be lost. Kofi stood in silence, the weight of the world pressing down on him. He had no choice but to accept his fate. The burden was his now. But he had a question that still lingered, one that felt more important than anything else. If I am to help you, what do I need to do? Kofi asked, his voice steady despite the storm of emotion swirling inside him. Zaroth's eyes flickered with a mixture of pride and sadness. You must unlock the power that lies within you, the power of your ancestors. Only then will you be able to sever the dark bond and protect the world from Ishara's wrath. But beware, Kofi. The journey ahead is fraught with peril, and the cost of breaking the curse will demand more from you than you can imagine. Kofi nodded, feeling a new resolve fill him. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew this, whatever it took, he had to stop Ishara. And he wouldn't do it alone. He was no longer just a boy. He was the guardian the world had been waiting for. Kofi spent the next few days in the heart of the forest, following Zaroth deeper into the ancient woods, where the air hummed with the ancient magic of the land. The dragon was teaching him, guiding him in ways he could barely comprehend. Every lesson felt like peeling back another layer of a mystery that had been hidden for centuries, and each new discovery about his bond with Zaroth sent shivers of realization down his spine. Zaroth had told him that their bond was not just spiritual, it was woven into the very fabric of the world. The power Kofi carried was ancient, linked to the guardians of the past. With each passing day, he could feel the strength growing inside him, like a fire igniting deep within his chest. But that fire was tempered with doubt, fear, and a constant pull from something darker, something that threatened to break the fragile peace that had held for centuries. As Kofi trained, his connection to the forest deepened. He could feel the earth's pulse beneath his feet, the wind's whispers in his ears, and the ancient trees swaying in a rhythm he had never known. He was learning to channel the energy of the world around him, learning to harness it for his own purposes, but it was difficult. The darkness, which Zaroth spoke of, was always near. It stirred in the shadows, in the spaces between thoughts, in the very air he breathed. One afternoon, as Kofi practiced his breathwork under Zaroth's watchful eyes, a sudden, chilling roar reverberated through the forest. It was distant, but the sheer force of it seemed to shake the ground beneath them. Kofi froze, feeling the power of it echo in his bones. Zaroth's massive head turned toward the sound, his eyes narrowing. That roar, it's her, Zaroth said, his voice deep and heavy with the weight of centuries. Ishara. Kofi's heart skipped a beat. She's awake. Already. Zaroth lowered his head, his eyes glowing with the fire of ancient fury. Her power grew stronger by the day. The Mamba's call is a sign that the seal is weakening. Ishara's influence is spreading through the land, corrupting everything it touches. Soon, she will be strong enough to break free of the prison that holds her. Kofi felt a shiver crawl up his spine. He had known that the battle was coming, but he hadn't realized how close it was. The sense of urgency was suffocating. He wasn't ready, not nearly enough. Then we must stop her now, Kofi said, his voice trembling with determination. Zaroth let out a low, rumbling growl. You are not ready, Kofi. The darkness she wields is ancient and deep. We must prepare, and you must unlock the full extent of your power before you face her. Kofi clenched his fist. The weight of the responsibility hung heavy on him, but there was no time to hesitate. If Ishara broke free, everything he knew would be lost. His ancestors had fought to protect the world from this very darkness, and now it was his turn. That night, as the moon hung high in the sky, Kofi sat alone in the clearing where Zaroth had first spoken to him. The dragon was resting nearby, his immense body coiled around the stone altar. Kofi looked up at the stars, trying to find some clarity, some sense of peace amidst the chaos. His thoughts drifted back to his childhood, the quiet life he had led in the village, the simple days of walking in the fields and fishing by the river. He had never dreamed of anything like this. And yet, here he was, standing at the threshold of something that could either save or destroy the world. His hands shook slightly as he clutched the journal that Amina had given him. It was the only link he had left to his ancestors, the only guide he could trust. He opened the ancient book, flipping through the pages until he found the passage Zaroth had spoken of, the one about the curse, about the bond between the dragons and the guardians. The words were written in an old script, but Kofi had learned to decipher them over the past few days. He read aloud, the words feeling heavier as they left his lips. The bond forged in blood shall remain unbroken. The guardian must rise when the curse awakens, and the dragon shall awaken with them. Together, they shall keep the balance or bring about its destruction. Kofi's voice faltered as he finished the passage. The meaning was clear, he and Zaroth were bound together by fate, their lives intertwined in a way he still didn't fully understand. But as he read the next passage, his heart skipped a beat. When the darkness stirs, the guardian shall face the shadow. To break the curse, the guardian must give all that they are, for the price of freedom is steep. He closed the book slowly, feeling the weight of the words pressed down on him. He had to face Ishara. But at what cost? The next morning, Zaroth woke Kofi early, his eyes glowing brighter than usual. The time is near, Zaroth said, his voice tinged with urgency. You must be ready. Kofi nodded, standing tall as the weight of his responsibility sank deeper into his bones. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll face Ishara. I'll protect the world. Zaroth regarded him silently for a long moment before speaking again. You are brave, Kofi. But know this, there is a great price to pay for breaking the curse. You will have to give up a part of yourself. It is the only way. The words hit Kofi like a hammer, his heart clenching at the thought of losing something so vital. He had to sacrifice something to stop Ishara. But what? I will face whatever comes, Kofi said, trying to suppress the fear that bubbled up inside him. I'm ready. Later that evening, as they journeyed deeper into the heart of the forest, the air grew thicker with tension. Zaroth led Kofi to the Elders' Grove, a sacred place where the first guardians had made their pact with the dragons long ago. The ancient trees stood like sentinels, their roots stretching deep into the earth, whispering in languages Kofi couldn't understand. It is here, Zaroth said, stopping before a massive stone pillar, covered in moss and runes. The place where the bond was formed. The place where your true power will awaken. Kofi stepped forward, feeling the power in the air, thick and tangible. He placed his hands on the stone, and immediately, the ground beneath him shuddered. The air sparkled with energy, and Kofi felt something stir within him, something ancient, primal, and full of power. But with it came the fear of what it might cost. You are ready, Kofi, Zaroth said, his voice solemn. But remember, the darkness is not easily defeated. It will test you. It will seek to break you. Kofi nodded, determined. He had come this far. And now, he would face his fate. The air was thick with tension as Kofi and Zaroth made their way through the dense, ancient forest. Every step felt heavy, as if the very earth itself was holding its breath. Kofi could feel the darkness gathering at the edges of the world, a power so ancient it threatened to consume everything in its path. He knew that Ishara was near, her power growing stronger with every passing moment. Zaroth, though still mighty, seemed older in that moment, his vast form weighed down by the knowledge of what was to come. He had lived for centuries, guiding the balance of the world, but even he knew that the darkness of Ishara could not be defeated by strength alone. It was a battle of wills, a test of sacrifice. Ishara was once a guardian, like me, Zaroth said quietly, his voice filled with sorrow. We were both created to protect this world. But Ishara was seduced by the darkness, by the promise of power that would make her the ruler of all. She sought to break the barrier between this world and the realm beyond, to unleash a force of chaos that would consume everything. Kofi looked at Zaroth, still struggling to understand. But how could a guardian like you, how could she fall to darkness? Zaroth's eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, flickered with ancient pain. It is easy to be seduced by the promise of power, Kofi. Ishara was once noble, but over time, she became obsessed with the idea of controlling all the creatures of the forest, of becoming the ruler of not just the dragons, but the very land itself. In her pursuit, she was corrupted. Her heart turned cold, her scales darkened. The bond between us, the guardians, was shattered, and she became a force of destruction. Kofi's heart sank as the full weight of Zaroth's words hit him. The dragon, who had once been a protector, was now a force of unimaginable evil. Ishara had once been a guardian of balance, but her thirst for power had twisted her into something monstrous. And now, it was Kofi's burden to stop her. The clearing was eerily silent as Kofi and Zaroth emerged from the woods. The sky above them was filled with dark, swirling clouds, as if the heavens themselves were preparing for the battle that was about to unfold. In the center of the clearing stood Ishara, her once glimmering scales now blackened and cracked, her eyes glowing with an unnatural red light. Her wings, massive and bat-like, unfurled slowly, casting a shadow that seemed to stretch across the entire forest. Ishara's presence was overwhelming, a cold, oppressive force that seemed to suck the life from the air. The trees around the clearing bent under the weight of her power, their leaves wilting as if in submission. Oh, Zaroth, Ishara's voice rumbled, deep and twisted, carrying the weight of centuries of bitterness. So, you have come. I was beginning to think you had forgotten about me. Zaroth's massive head lowered, his eyes filled with sorrow and resolve. I have not forgotten, Ishara. And I will not let you destroy the balance we swore to protect. Ishara let out a low, mocking laugh. Destroy the balance. No, Zaroth. I am the balance now. I will remake this world in my image. No more weak mortals. No more forests that bind me. I will rule everything. And you, she turned her gaze to Kofi, her eyes narrowing with venom. You are the last obstacle in my way. Kofi felt a chill run down his spine as Ishara's gaze locked onto him. There was something in her eyes that unsettled him, a deep, primal hunger. She was a predator, and he was the prey. But he couldn't back down now. He couldn't let her succeed. You were once a guardian, like me, Kofi said, trying to find the words to reach her. You once swore to protect this world. You don't have to do this. You can still choose to stop. Ishara's laugh was low and sinister. Choose. I have already chosen, boy. I will tear this world apart, and you will watch as I build something greater in its place. And you? You are the key. You will help me unlock the power that lies beyond this realm. Your bloodline, my curse, it is all connected. Kofi's heart clenched as he realized the truth of her words. The curse, the bond, his ancestors, they had all played a part in this moment. Ishara's fall had been the result of a betrayal, a darkness she had chosen to embrace. And now, Kofi was the one who had to put an end to it. The battle began with a deafening roar. Ishara charged, her massive wings beating the air with enough force to create shockwaves. Kofi could barely keep his balance as the ground trembled beneath him. Zaroth leaped into action, his massive claws striking with precision, trying to hold Ishara back, but her corrupted power was too strong. Kofi felt a surge of energy within him, the ancient magic of his bloodline awakening. He extended his arms, focusing on the bond he shared with Zaroth, drawing on the power that had been passed down through generations. The world seemed to slow as he concentrated, feeling the earth beneath him, the wind in his hair, and the energy of the forest that had always been connected to him. You must do it, Kofi, Zaroth's voice echoed in his mind. Sever the bond. End this. With a deep breath, Kofi closed his eyes, summoning the last of his strength. The bond between him and Zaroth was powerful, yes, but it was also a double-edged sword. In order to stop Ishara and break the curse that had bound them, Kofi knew what he had to do. He severed the bond. The world exploded in a burst of light. The ground beneath him cracked, and the air seemed to shimmer with raw power. Kofi felt a part of himself, a part that had been entwined with Zaroth's essence, ripped away. The energy surged through him, a brilliant pulse of light and force that pushed Ishara back, sending her stumbling. Ishara screamed in fury as the darkness that had once consumed her began to unravel. Her massive form writhed in the light, her power weakening with each passing second. No, she howled. You cannot. But it was too late. The curse had been broken. The bond had been severed. The darkness that had once threatened the world began to dissipate, fading into nothingness. Ishara's power faded with it, her once mighty form crumbling to dust. As the light from Kofi's sacrifice dimmed, the forest around him began to heal. The trees straightened, the ground beneath his feet softened, and the oppressive weight of Ishara's presence vanished. The air was still, calm, and peaceful, as if the world itself had taken a deep breath. Kofi stood alone in the clearing, his heart pounding, the aftermath of his decision settling over him like a heavy cloak. The bond was broken. Zaroth, the mighty dragon, stood beside him, his form no longer as large as it once was, but still imposing. You did it, Kofi, Zaroth said, his voice filled with pride and a deep sadness. You have saved the world. But at what cost? Kofi looked around, feeling the weight of his sacrifice. The world was safe, but he was changed. The bond with Zaroth had been severed, and though the dragon was still alive, the connection between them was now gone. I've done what I had to do, Kofi said softly, his voice carrying the weight of his decision. But I'll never forget the bond we shared. You were my guide, my protector. Zaroth's eyes softened, and he nodded. And you, Kofi, were my strength. You will always carry the legacy of the guardians within you. Though the bond is broken, your heart remains strong. Kofi looked up at the sky, the first light of dawn breaking through the trees. The world was safe. For now. And though the journey had been painful, he knew that his path was not over. The world would always need protectors, and perhaps, someday, his own legacy would be one that would inspire others. But for now, Kofi stood alone in the clearing, knowing that the sacrifice had been worth it.